Hey, what's up guys, it's Scarra here. I'm just going to go over a quick video about the patch 6.15 notes. Usually I go over this on stream, but due to extremely unique complications, I don't have that much time to be able to do this on the day that it comes out. So I decided to wake up and do this early before I go off to do my other stuff in Sherman Oaks. So anyways, without further ado, let's talk about patch 6.15. Usually most of my patch notes will be talking about what I think should be changed. Rather than talking about, in general, before the patch comes out, usually I'll talk about things that I would like to see changed. And to be honest, sometimes the list is very long, sometimes it's very short, just depends what I think. So a good example is I feel like there's a lot of, the support diversity is insane right now. It's super good. Maybe overall the shielding and healing items need to be a little bit nerfed, maybe just to the point that they don't stack, something like that. But for the most part, support's in a great spot right now. I think jungle variety is actually really tight. Like there's only a few 4 or 5 really strong champions, and if they get nerfed, I think it'll open up the patch for other better champions, but it's hard to say. I also think mid lane is really volatile right now because with the nerf of Victor Azir and probably Malzahar is going to get nerfed here from what I understand. With those three getting nerfed, really mid lane is kind of open again for your own personal interpretation up until the meta settles again. And so I guess we'll talk a little bit about, I think Sivir is a little bit strong, but I also feel like, yeah, Sivir is probably a little bit too strong in terms of like her overall priority, so she could probably use a little bit of nerf. And I think that for top lane, what people playing top lane? I guess Trundle, Aurelia. Overall, I think top lane is kind of fairly unique, and with the meta changing to the making lane swaps unable to happen, maybe more dominant top lane champions like Trundle might need to be nerfed, but I'm not too sure about that lane, so I don't want to comment too much about it. So let's just go through patch 6.15 notes. What's their approach for this? With regional playoffs, this is the patch, 2 patches before Worlds, so they shouldn't make too drastic changes. Like in my opinion, I think biggest changes should be midseason and preseason, and then everything else should be fairly small balance changes to accommodate. Braum is a god at 1v2s. By picking Braum, essentially it means that you can force the 1v2 whatever you want because your level 1 is so strong. I don't know what they're going to do about it. They decided to nerf his passive early levels and nerf his Q early levels. I don't necessarily think this was entirely necessary. I think the stun alone makes his 1v2 still super strong, so I don't think this necessarily takes too much away from him, but it means that maybe the level 1 all-in, level 2 all-in in lane is a lot harder to deal with, or a lot easier to deal with, so to speak. I'm not exactly sure if it matters too much. I think these are just nerfs because maybe they thought Braum was seeing too much play. I don't necessarily think this will do anything to him. I think he's still super valuable pick. It's not like Braum can all in at level 1. Anyways, even with the best Braum lane, which I think is Lucian Braum because he can proc Braum passive, at best your all in is level 2 or level 3. So like by then the concussive blows damage difference is probably only 10 damage and 10 damage on Q, which is not that much, to be honest. Sure, it's a little more than 10% of the damage nerf, but I feel like if you get the look correctly, you're going to either get the sums anyways, and this necessarily isn't going to matter too much, especially because late game, like, the passive damage scales back up. Corki. So this champion I heard is pretty bad right now. After the nerf to its passive, to where it's not 10% more damage overall, it's just equal damage. He stopped seeing any play in mid or bot lane, but of course since his Worlds is coming up, Corki has to get buffed. So they decided to buff his playmaking ability, which I think is pretty cool. I think his passive is very unique, and I like that they're looking to buff that. I probably would have just reverted his passive nerf because I think that's pretty key to be able to play him, and especially because they buffed his E the last patch or so. I think that he's maybe closing in on play viability in terms of being able to be played a lot. But this is definitely nice because I feel like the ability to use his package a lot is cool. It's like it's the unique identifying trait that Corki has right now. Hecarim. I think Hecarim is super snowballing solo queue, and even in competitive play, it seems like Hecarim is going off a lot if you can get him through the early game. And sure, if you're playing Nidalee, you can destroy him, but a lot of other junglers find it difficult to be able to do that. I think the champion itself is very strong right now, and it looks like he's just going to get nerfed. I would probably just nerf some of his damage. I don't think you can really split apart his burst damage because it's tied so strictly onto his E. And so it's really almost impossible. I think that it's fine because he's supposed to be there to deal with immobile backline carries, stuff like Jhin, stuff like Ashe, and because those champions are meta right now, Hecarim is even better than he would normally be, especially on top of the Trinity Force buffs and the Ghost buff. So what does it say right now? Okay, so they're nerfing his base damage and his Q base damage. Okay, I think these are pretty fair nerfs. I don't think Hecarim will see less play because of these nerfs. I think that he's still really strong. But these will probably be nerfs to where maybe you can exploit his early game a little bit more. So if you do pick a champion that can really take over the jungle, maybe something like early game Graves or Nidalee, then you can actually do that if you're playing optimally. There's more windows for you to do that. I think that's fair. Illaoi, this champ usually gets buffed on every patch, so I don't think she's bad. I think she's really good right now, and I am curious what they're going to do with her. Tentacles are visible in brushes to enemies' vision range. Oh, it's so that you can see them clear as the enemy. Okay, that's fine. That's like maybe a very, very small nerf to Illaoi, but it's almost completely irrelevant. Jarvan. So Jarvan is a champion that used to see a lot of play in the jungle, but he stopped seeing any play after a 10 armor nerf on his E because he couldn't go through the jungle with high sustain. And it was back when Jarvan Rumble was picked a lot. It was like such a devastating combo, but ever since the nerf to his E, and other junglers have just been able to kind of take him over and like kind of kick him out of the jungle. And to be able to go back into the jungle, he's going to need something else, either to help his clear speed or his sustain, hopefully both. So they decided to buff his attack speed early, give him 5% on the passive and 5% on the active. I think that's actually really good for him early game. It helps him clear a lot better. Obviously, finishes off with more sustain. I think that's a really nice change. Won't necessarily change him too much, and he still has that like semi-viable top lane Jarvan flex. I don't think it's very good, but in certain situations, like let's say they play top lane Lissandra, top lane Jarvan was the premier counter pick to that pick, and so if anytime Lissandra might see play, Jarvan might see play as well. I think that this might help him. This will help him a lot in the jungle. I don't think it'll be top tier, but it'll be helpful. So right now, Karma is a champion that sees almost insane amounts of play in the support role because she can disengage and engage. She scales very, very, very well. So she's commonly first picked, first rotationed, especially on red side. She probably needs nerfs on her shields. That's it, especially with the introduction of extra shielding percentage items like Forbidden Idol and Crucible and stuff like that. I think that the amount that she can shield even without building AP is kind of high. What are they going to do? So they removed... Okay, they lowered the shield amount early, and they made it so the Mantra E gets scales with ranks in E. Makes it so early game Karma can't give huge move speed, but 40% is still a lot. I don't think this will change anything about Karma. I think Karma is still really, really, really strong, and probably on notice to see what people if she'll get nerfed or not. I don't, like I said before, I don't think supports are bad right now. I think supports are probably one of the best roles in the game because they have the most versatile, which means that Karma isn't oppressing that many picks out of the meta, but she is extremely lane dominant as well as being able to bring high utility to team comp. So she probably should be noted that she might see future nerfs because I don't think these are almost anything for her. Especially since you max E first sometime, or you go 3 points in Q and then max E. Kassadin. So Kassadin is a champ that just sucks in lane, except for in specific matchups. But if you can get him to 6 well, he's okay. So a lot of times I think that his matchups are decent as long as the jungler can hold the wave for him once before 6, like come in and shove in the wave with him once before 6. At 6, he can usually stabilize most mid lane matchups. I don't think he's that bad. And he's seen some competitive play here and there in Europe. In LPL usually always whips out Kassadin just for whatever reason. They love Kassadin. And I think that I don't necessarily think he needs that many buffs. I think he's like viable as is. He's situationally picked. So I'm really curious to see what they do with him. They decide to buff his Q damage late game. Oh, they're making it so that if you put more, but that doesn't even matter. Like I lose damage. I don't even. I get like the same damage throughout the lane. This won't change anything about Kassadin's laning phase. He's still gonna be relatively bad. The E though is nice. It allows you to be able to use less mana to clear, and especially because a lot of times you need to be max putting points into Q. Even though maxing E is better because it's the slow is great and it's AOE as well as the fact that you can team fight with it really easily. It's better for skirmishes and for picks. But you need the shield on Q and the single target damage for consistent damage. And so it's nice to be able to have to put points in the queue for the matchup while still having a low mana cost E to be able to get through lane a little bit better. This won't change anything about him. I don't think he necessarily needs buffs in the first place. Malzahar, this champ is a huge problem right now because he's really easy to play and he's essentially unpickable past 13 minutes. I think that his cooldown on his ult passive is insane. It starts really, really long, 30 seconds. You get a lot of time to abuse a champ in 30 seconds, but it goes from 30 to 6. I would like to see something like 30 to 10 or something on his passive to make it so it's not just so free. Like he can just walk up and shove the wave. So what is it? His passive cooldown goes up 30 to 12, okay? That's really good, and that's 0.25 seconds after taking damage. Oh, that's a huge nerf to Malzahar. I think that'll actually be really, really helpful to be able to pick him now, because before the only way you can really beat Malzahar is like long-range threats. So Jhin was a champion that took advantage of Malzahar really, really well, for instance. And yeah, I think he'll be a lot less easier to deal with, or a lot more easier to deal with by teams who can initiate him or get on him easily. And the Malzahar actually have to pay attention to his positioning. It's good. It's really good. Notice they didn't nerf any Malzahar's damage, which is great for him because he scales really, really well off the 2 items Spike, Morello, and Rylai's. Anything above that, he's great. He does insane amounts of damage, and so everything is there. It's just he's more pickable now, which is great for the enemy team. Nidalee, well, aside from people at the very, very top, people tend to play Nidalee pretty badly. She tends to be a high elo stomp machine though, because if you know how to cancel all of her abilities, if you know how to do the routes correctly, she clears faster than almost anyone and can really snowball a game. So she usually sees nerfs every single game. So what are they doing right now? They're making it so they're making it so her ulti auto reset doesn't exist. They're removing it. Well, that's interesting. What is the compensation for that? They're increasing the damage overall on the rest of her kit to compensate for that. Okay, I think that makes sense. Riot didn't like the fact that you had to constantly auto reset with her passive. I think it adds more dimensions to the champion, and it kind of sucks that they're taking it away, but necessarily won't change the relative strength of the champion. It just makes her maybe a little bit less. Her skill ceiling drops a little bit. It's okay. Renekton, this champ was known as a lane bully, dominant lane bully, but he hasn't really seen much play recently, so you could probably use some buffs. Not only is the 1v2 meta like whatever for him, but honestly, even in lane, it seems like he doesn't really go off unless he runs Ignite a lot of times. So what does he do? Gains 20 Fury on cast, and the damage is higher. Early game for Dominus. Okay, I think that's really good actually. It opens him up to do really, really strong combos, and it makes his lane presence even better, which is something that I think he should need because he doesn't scale super well without going 6 damage items. I do think, though, there was a period of time where Renekton Mundo Shyvana was meta, and it was probably the worst top lane meta of all time, and that was absolutely terrible. So I hope that never comes back, but I don't think this will really push it to that point. Okay, so New Shen is super good right now. He probably used some nerfs because his global allows you to run really, really unique types of comps, stuff like Assassin plus Shen is always super good. You can put a lot of bot lane pressure with him, and he's relatively safe. Gnar had to come up as a counter pick to Shen as like a way to push him out of lane, and I think that Shen overall is actually, I think Shen's in a good spot. I don't think Shen necessarily needs nerfs. I just think he's relatively strong right now. It should just be on the watch in case he gets too good. They decided to nerf his health regen to 10 to 8.5. That's not that bad. Like, that's almost nothing. He'll still see a lot of play. Shyvana is a champ that just free farms and just dragons on you, but he doesn't scale. She doesn't scale very well unless she gets a lot of kills early and is able to hit her like 2-3 item spike with Titanic Cinder Hulk, or I think people go the Rage Blade sometimes, or they used to. I don't know if they'll still go stuff like that. What did they do for her? They passively increased her Fury gain so that she can ulti more. Okay, I think that's fine because she needs buffs. I don't think she's very good. Sona. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Sona. Before people were like, "Oh, Sona's too strong." She got hotfix. Everyone pointed at their win rate. I thought that Sona's still relatively abusable in lane, and I think that she probably did deserve the nerfs. I don't necessarily think she's as strong as people think that she is, because even if you look at games, a lot of games at like 30 minutes or like 25 minutes, the support's level 11 and the mid laner's level 16 or 15. And so like being able to hit the ideal situation where Sona is super late game with like 3 Ocean Drakes and like 4 items doesn't ever really happen. But she is kind of lane dominant, and she does do really, really well into top tier picks like Karma. So maybe she is better than I think. So what do they do? So they are going to. Oh, this is just talking about the hotfix to her before. Makes sense. So I did think that maybe she deserved these. It's no problem. It's not a big deal. And I guess they're gonna keep her on watch. I think that she's very close to being balanced, while balanced while strong, and another versatile pick in the large ocean of support picks, which every support player loves to tell me is great. What is Taliyah right now? So Taliyah is losing some damage here and there. Oh, they're making it so her ulti cooldown is higher. I think Taliyah right now is in an interesting spot. I think a lot of pros overvalued her relative worth, and even I overvalued her. But what happens is when you do look for a gank, you have to be very, very patient, because since you are all skill shot based, if they do have flashes up and they flash your skill shots, you're actually just useless for a period of time, especially before you get items. And so I've seen a lot of Taliyahs go like 2-0, 3-0, and then look for a gank that can work, but realize that it's really hard to do anything if your abilities get flashed. And even in pro play, you'll see Taliyah not be able to snowball or not be able to go off to the point where other champions can, and it's easier for other champions to make plays. Stuff like Malzahar is just much easier to play than Taliyah. But this would probably be the last set of nerfs for her, because I think she's just strong. I don't think she's necessarily super, super OP. Although she's seen a relatively high amount of bans in North America, I don't necessarily think she's as good as people think she is. Vayne. So Vayne sucks right now. I think any meta where Vayne is first pickable is bad. We had that meta quite a while back, so the AD meta, it will really suck if Vayne is first pickable. But I think she should be like a relative counter pick to stuff like Sivir and Azrael, stuff that she historically did beat, and now I feel like she doesn't even necessarily beat them that bad or at all anymore. And so any kind of buffs to Vayne would be nice. So bonus damage to structures. Okay, so she can push faster. I think that's reasonable. It's not really a big buff. She won't really see any kind of increase in win rate with this, but it's just small stuff that helps her here and there. Victor. So Victor last nerf was giving his item 1250 cost. So if you did pressure the Victor lane, he had to back and you couldn't buy that item. It was super bad for him. I thought that was a pretty unique nerf. I liked it. And what are you going to do now? So R only gains his return speed boost when Victor targets himself. Oh. So they're tying up the mechanics. So I didn't even know about this mechanic. I'm a mid lane player, which should say something about it. I think this barely does anything. It's cool. It may be a small minor nerf, but Victor's relative strength is still very, very high. I expect to see Victor still played a lot. Vladimir, movement speed down, W cooldown up. So it seemed like people, even after the nerfs, Vlad's still very, very strong. And they want to nerf his invulnerability time because all of his item paths end up going to 40% CDR anyways, with Protobelt, Abyssal, Zanya, or Protobelt, Zanya's, like CDR boots, Abyssal. Will hit for about 40% depending on what you do with runes every single game, and because of it, It's really hard to kill him actually. So I guess nerfing Sanguine Pool is good. I would have maybe not nerfed the early levels because I think it's before you get CDR, it's pretty exploitable. Like a 28, 26-second cooldown isn't that big of a deal. But I guess pushing it up 2 seconds early just is it's not really that relevant either. I like the way they nerfed it though. The move speed and the Sanguine Pool are definitely more ways you can take advantage of a champion that should typically dominate mid ranges. So if you're playing stuff like Anivia and you can control the mid range really well, mid to low range, then hopefully you can take more advantage of this champion with these nerfs. Zac, champion is not very good. It's okay. Hopefully it'll see more play. I think that he ganks mid really well, but aside from, and it has very unique gank paths in other lanes, but aside from that, can't skirmish super well unless he's ahead. And so what is it? Oh, they just fixed the slingshot bug. Okay, this was super infuriating. You would just like randomly E and you click the minimap so he would just slingshot like the opposite direction of where you're pointing. It's happened to every Zac player, and even me who recreationally played Zac for a period of time saw this. So this is actually a pretty good buff. Thank God this bug fix happened. Zyra. So I haven't seen Zyra since they nerfed her, and she's getting compensating buffs for it. Q damage, AP ratio up. I think that's good. I don't know. I like it. It's because they noticed that Zyra, they actually kind of pushed Zyra out of the meta. I think at the time beforehand, people were really overrating the value of Zyra when they thought Zyra, Karma, and Braum were all on the same level. I think people slowly realized that Zyra is more situational. She really is only very effective into strong dive into dive situations because that's just the range that she relatively dominates with her ulti. And Karma and Braum were much more versatile in what they were able to bring, and so I don't think she was as strong as people even thought outside of her laning phase. And seeing these buffs is probably pretty welcome because she needs a little bit of help here and there. Then we have all this stuff. Oh, okay, so the Ardent Sensor heal will no longer stack across multiple Ardent Sensors. I thought this was going to be obvious, but they didn't put it in the very beginning. Okay, cool. I like that they're not going to stack. 15%, so they won't even stack with each other. That's good. That's really good. So you won't be able to find people with Ardent Sensor and Crucible and healing, later shielding for an insane amount. I think that's nice. I still think maybe Crucible, or maybe the actual value of this is too high, the Ardent healing, but I guess we'll see what happens. Oh, and they're doing this outer turret stuff. I think this is kind of crazy. I'm actually okay for them to experiment with this, but I think that it's relatively too late in the season to do so. I think you're given like maybe 2 months to Worlds, which seems like a long time, but it just seems like this is such a big change where they try to entirely eliminate a large portion, like probably 30% of what every competitive game opens with, that this is a change that should have been pushed out during preseason or midseason. And pushing it out now, well, they can't say like, wow, they have 2 months to be able to adapt, and the best team at Worlds should be able to adapt to the best patch. Like, I prefer to watch teams play on the patch that they're best at, like on their best form. And so when patches come out where every Worlds patch, sometimes there's like something that's just really really strong. So let's say Riot reworks a champion like Gameplank and gives him 70% armor pen with barrels. And also at the same time has Mordekaiser in the same rework, and Darius, and their perma banned, or like half the cast is banned for Worlds. I think that makes Worlds less appealing because quite frankly they're not really able to adapt that fast to it, and if the adaptation is these champions are too strong, then their only counterplay is to ban or pick it, and I don't really like doing that. Just like I feel like if the adaptation of all the teams was okay for 3 years we've been lane swapping, and now they give us 2 months to be able to practice just doing standard lanes every single game, and then focusing a lot on, and this is going to really emphasize bot lane pressure, right? So in solo queue, I always gank bot lane anyways because I can pick up 2 kills rather than 1, and top lane typically doesn't have the CC that bot lane, which has exhaust, guaranteed exhaust, plus usually CC from the support always brings. But it's going to be an even bigger focus on me to go 5-man bot lane with my jungler, 4-man bot lane with my jungler, break the first hour. That's going to give us a huge lead. It's like securing an early dragon on the old patch where dragon used to give gold. And I think that's such a big change. I don't know how this is going to warp any kind of thoughts or any kind of like team styles, and just in general, I felt that it its release right here, while maybe better for spectators, because certainly I hate watching lane swaps. It's really boring early game. Even if you could do some unique variations on it, a lot of times it's not as fun to watch, just straight up. Um, I do think this could be an okay change. I just feel like it came in kind of late. Well, I guess we'll just have to see how it works out. And honestly, I don't play Twisted Tree Line. Sorry, I don't do any changes on that. Champion select, Q times, position select now displays when combination impact estimate Q. Okay, that's fine. Oh, it'll show you what types of like mid jungle what your estimate Q times to be. I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know if that's gonna be nice because always information to see is is nice, but I don't know what kind of impact that'll have on people's ideas of what to play. They extend ranked teams. That's cool. All right, that's pretty much it. Overall, like I like the patch. I like that they ended up nerfing Hecarim, buffing Jarvan, nerfing Malzahar. I really liked all of that, and really they didn't really do too much with this nerf, and they nerfed Vlad a little bit. Buff Zyra. I like the patch. I think I could have expected more changes to other champions, but overall, it's not bad. I'm really just worried about the first tower blood and the outer tower bot lane having no resist early and the lane swapping thing, but that'll be determined in the next coming weeks how it is, or I guess the next coming months. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a nice day.